Hello everyone. In this video, we'll cover the top 8 ways to heal at a boss without eating. Now, before we start, I think it's important to mention that it is perfectly reasonable to eat, even through a lot of mechanics, even if this results in some substantially slower kills. But, if you don't want to eat, watch the video and I'll cover all the other methods that you can heal at a boss. The first one I'm going to mention is the Vampyric Blood Essence. With the Vampyric Blood Essence equipped, each hit has a chance to heal 2.5% of melee damage dealt, up to 250 damage. If you activate it, and you can only do this once in a while, you'll heal 25% damage of the next melee hit. This requires completion of the River of Blood quest, and it takes the pocket slot. So, the advantages to the Vampyric Blood Essence are it is passive. You do not have to do anything while wearing the Vampyric Blood Essence for it to be usable. You can also activate it occasionally to get some small heals that you can rely on. The problems, though, is that it has poor general healing ability, and it only works with melee. Next, we'll cover using the Resonance ability. It's a basic defensive ability that has a 30-second cooldown. Each time you use Resonance, it will heal 50% of the damage you take, plus another 0.5% of damage that you took from that hit, times the tier of the shield, which means, for example, if you're using a tier 90 shield, you're going to heal 95% of the damage you took. Resonance does not heal you, but it will still block the damage of typeless hits generally. However, some typeless hits will even ignore the Resonance ability. So the advantages of using Resonance are, it's excellent for defending against single hits. You even sometimes still use it against single typeless hits, even though you don't get a heal. If you're already camping a shield, there is nothing really wrong with ever using this ability. However, there are some disadvantages. The first one is that you lose significant amounts of DPS if you try to use Resonance literally as often as possible. Second, what you try to Resonance does not always have 100% accuracy. It is quite possible that you use the Resonance ability, and then the boss proceeds to splash the next 3 auto attacks and you don't get any heals. It may be awkward to switch to a shield and use Resonance if you're camping two-handed, and there's a 30-second cooldown, so there's only so often that you can actually use this ability. Now let's cover using the blood spells. Every time you use one of the aforementioned blood spells, you'll heal 5% of the total damage that that spell has done on that cast. Now, there are some advantages. If you're using Fortic Auto Attack, you actually can heal quite easily using this, and it works very effectively on multiple targets, especially if you're using Blood Blitz or Blood Barrage. However, there are some disadvantages. Specifically, if you're not using Fortic Auto Attack, it's actually very hard to use blood spells effectively to heal without significantly losing a lot of DPS. It also burns runes very quickly, and you can only use this with a magic style. The Vampirism aura heals 5% of any damage dealt. It heals a maximum of 50 health per hit, and it uses an aura slot. The pros are it's passive, so you don't have to do anything when using it. It also heals more when fighting multiple enemies. However, the general con is that it actually still doesn't heal that much anyway. Now, let's cover Soul Split, which is a very popular way to heal at bosses. Soul Split heals 10% damage, up to 2,000 damage, and then 5% damage for any damage between 2,000 and 4,000, and then heals 1.25% damage for any damage between 4,000 and 6,000. Another thing about Soul Split that's not so nice is it cannot heal more than 25% of your current HP. Using an Amulet of Souls or an Essence of Finality amulet will increase the average heal by 18.7% generally. Soul Split flicking is a common tactic used at high levels of bossing. Players will pray Soul Split as much as they can during the fight, switching to protection prayers only when they see the boss is firing an auto attack. So the advantages of using Soul Split are, it can be done basically at any boss, almost anywhere, with any style. And if you do this effectively, you can heal very, very quickly. However, the disadvantage are, if you're Soul Split flicking, it can be very click intensive, and if you mess up a prayer switch, especially against a boss with strong auto attacks, it can be very dangerous. Also, some bosses attack very frequently and can make it very difficult to Soul Split flick effectively. And finally, if you're fighting many targets, although Soul Split will heal a lot, you will also take a very significant amount of damage. Now let's cover one of my favorites, the Vampirism Scrimshaw. The Vampirism Scrimshaw heals 5% of all melee damage dealt, and it heals a maximum of 200 per hit. This uses the pocket slot item, and it does require it to be activated. The advantages are its passive, and you can use it anywhere you melee, and it heals very quickly. The disadvantages are it only works with melee, and if you choose to use the tradable versions, thus you're buying them off of the Grand Exchange, they can get very expensive, and it requires a significant amount of ports if you don't want to buy them off of the Grand Exchange. Next, the SARADOMIN GODSWORD. This weapon has a special attack that deals up to 275% ability damage, and heals 50% of the damage it's dealt. This special attack requires 50% adrenaline. I highly recommend sacrificing this weapon to the Essence of Finality Amulet if you want to use the special attack, as switching to the SARADOMIN GODSWORD is probably not very effective. The pros are it can heal a large amount of HP immediately, and it can be used any time that you have 50% adrenaline. It heals more, especially when you have DPS increases such as Berserk or the Zarl's GODSWORD special attack. The disadvantages are it uses a lot of adrenaline. Every time you want this heal, you need to use 50% adrenaline. It also only works with melee, and it is expensive to actually start using. Finally, at some bosses that have an HP cap, this heal does not actually work properly, as you're going to do barely any damage around the time the HP cap is active, thus giving you barely any healing. Finally, let's get to ONYX Criminal Bolts. While using ONYX Criminal Bolts, every hit that your character does has a 10% chance of increasing by 25%, and then you would heal 25% damage that you have dealt to the target. Now, the advantages of the ONYX Criminal Bolts are their passive. While wielding them, you don't have to do anything particularly unusual to make them work. Also, they do actually increase the DPS you would be doing with ranged. The disadvantages, though, are they're expensive to use, and then other Criminal Bolts that you could use would both be cheaper and probably more DPS. Finally, not only does this work only with ranged, but also this only works with crossbows, so if you're trying to use a Saren Godbow, for example, the ONYX Criminal Bolts will not work. Here are the methods I'd recommend. The Vampirism Scrimshaw ONYX Bolt SARADOMIN GODSWORD Special, using Resonance occasionally, and then Soul Split are probably the best ways to heal during a boss encounter. You can use any combination of these that you want. There are some good ways still. Using blood spells and a vampirism aura are reasonable ways to heal as well, although they might be a little more awkward to rely on. And the only method I think is frankly never to be used is the Vampyric Blood Essence, which barely heals anything at all, and can't even be used with a Vampirism Scrimshaw. Alright, I think that's everything. I think we've covered basically all the good ways you could try to heal at a boss, plus a couple that I don't think are actually very useful. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments down below. I'll be releasing my next video on Sunday evening at about 10 PM Pacific Standard Time. Be sure to also follow my Twitch page and subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Thank you, and have a good one.